Traditionally, the Kansas IndyCar 300 has been held in the dead of summer when the temperatures soar close to 100 degrees and the humidity is oppressive. Well, the race this year has been moved to April, and it's a picture-perfect day, and you can tell by the fans that are jamming the stands as we get ready to race in the fourth stop, the final stop before the Indianapolis 500.
Somebody said you better let go.
Consider it the sliding sound of a crescendo, the product of mass times the velocity of an object, or the energy that pushes to the lead. The IndyCar Series returns to America for one last race before the month of May, when the world's eyes focus on Indianapolis. Today in Kansas, which driver will make the push to the front and take the momentum all the way to the Brickyard? The drivers are back from their long trip from Motegi, Japan, but if you talk to a number of them, you'll find out that they are bleary-eyed and waking up in the middle of the night because it's a 12-hour time change from Japan to Kansas. And there is Sam Hornish, the winner of this race last year, as we get you ready for Firestone Race Day with the latest news and notes on the happenings of the IndyCar Series. We've already talked about the fatigue. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We also want to talk about the fact that it is no longer just a two-car championship chase. We thought after the first two events it might be what we saw last year, Ganassi Racing, Penske Racing. But what was proven at Motegi, Japan is that it is now a three-car championship. But one of those guys that is still in the hunt, is obviously a lot of drivers are in the hunt, is the man who won back at Homestead, Dan Weldon. Let's check in first with a bleary-eyed Jack Arute.
Yeah, you're right, Marty. Dan Weldon is the current points leader, hot off that victory. But for Dan Weldon, the memories still sting from 1 year ago when he was in the midst of a points chase. It is a Dan Weldon that uses that memory to bring a special attitude to 07.
It's not often in IndyCars that you have opportunities to be able to win championships, and we definitely did last year, and we let that slip.
Dan Weldon spun out on the track.
We just didn't capitalize on opportunities that we had to win races, and unfortunately when you don't do that, one, you don't deserve to win the championship, and two, you're gonna lose races.
He's gone from 9th to 2nd. It'll be his third consecutive win here at Homestead, Miami.
Let's go back to the pit stop. There was an uncharacteristic miscue, and yet you calmed your crew down.
I got you, don't freak out.
Even though we got by and won Homestead, the season's still been a little bit frustrating.
Contact, a little bump and nudge from Elio Castroneves.
We saw last year the championship was won on race wins. It wasn't won on points.
Dan Weldon is going to win the race, and the champion is Sam Hornish Jr.
And I'm joined by Dan Weldon, the current points leader. And 1 week ago, Dan, you encountered a radio problem, and afterwards we talked, and you said you can't let those sorts of things slip away. But yet at Homestead, you had that new attitude. What type of attitude do you bring to Kansas?
It's a fiery one, I would have to say. It's frustrating. I mean, I'm in this business to win, and I certainly think that everybody at Target Chip Ganassi Racing and myself have the capability to win and be dominant. And we had that opportunity at Motegi, and we didn't capitalize on it. But I think here at Kansas we have a good car. We didn't quite get the most out of it in qualifying, but I think it's always good. This looks like there's 4 or 5 of us at the front that I think really want to win, and I think for everybody out there it's going to be a very intense race. But I can't leave my boy out, TK, out front on his own. I've got to go help him, so that's the intention.
Yeah, you're talking about Tony Kanaan. All of a sudden, we have not 2 teams, but 3 teams that are in the midst of the hunt. Tony Kanaan and Andretti Green Racing have solved some of their woes from 1 year ago.
It's Tony Kanaan who will start from P1 today. Tony, congratulations. Now, coming off a win in Motegi, you certainly had reason to be cheerful on the long trip home, but how rough has this quick turnaround been for you guys?
Oh, it's always rough. I mean, it's less than 5 days to recover, you know, and you're already thinking about what you're going to do here and leading to the month of May. So it was tough for everybody, but I guess when you win and you started from the pole the next weekend, it makes it a lot easier.
Now, how important is a strong finish here going into the month of May?
Will definitely be important, and I think, Brian, it's more important for the championship. This is going to be a tight one like the last 4 years, and points are really important. So it will be good not to lose the confidence going to the month of May, having a good finish here. It's going to be a tough race. Trust me, I think we have 4 or 5 guys here that we're going to battle until the last lap.
Well, good luck today. Vince?
Well, Brian, anytime you're talking about favorites, the conversation's usually not very old by the time you mention Team Penske and these two drivers, Helio Castroneves and Sam Hornish, particularly on the mile-and-a-half ovals, because you guys teamed for 4 victories on the mile-and-a-halves last year, Helio, but so far this year in the 2 mile-and-a-halves, your best finish is 8th. What's been the difference?
Well, I guess everybody step up, you know, and no question it's been more challenged, and obviously everybody works, so it's just a competition the way it is. I do believe today we have a very consistent car. Last year we didn't, and I feel great, so hopefully we'll be consistent. My goal today is to finish in the top 3. If you have a chance to win, we'll make it happen.
You've won Indy twice. How important is it to do well here today leading to Indianapolis?
Huge. I mean, this place, you know, I know it's a different track. I know it's a total different layout, but every small details before you're going to Indy that you put in your car, it's always going to be a benefit. So this is a very important race too.
Well, and let's turn to the man that won Indianapolis last year, Sam Hornish Jr. That always makes him smile. He always grins when he said that. But you won this race too. You dominated this race last year, led 149 laps. Are there similarities between the tracks that you can transfer from one to the other?
The biggest thing has been the heat. You know, last year at Indy it was very hot on race day, and this track is really notorious for being really hot, really slick. Obviously, you know, now the race being in April, it's a little bit cooler than what we had in the past, so maybe some of the comparisons aren't quite as much, but you know, we've had a lot of fun racing here in Kansas, and really looking forward to getting this race underneath our belts so that we can go to Indy and see if we can't go back there and repeat again.
Marty?
All right, thanks, Vince. Let's bring in Scott Goodyear and talk a little bit more about the fatigue factor. You've been through this process. Fatigue leads to mistakes, and crew members are even more tired than some of these drivers.
And absolutely, you know, a lot of those Penske guys did not get a chance to go back home because their shop's located in Carolina, so they actually had to work out of Indianapolis. So they're very tired. And these guys told me today, we just want to get home. So, I mean, that plays in the mind just a little bit. Also, the key thing there is that you want to make sure you get, like those guys said, a run going into Indianapolis. And I know some people say it's not important, but you know something? If you are positive on it and you're going in there, you've had a great finish here, that carries you into Indy.
And that means momentum, momentum, momentum.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're getting ready for the command to start engines, but we've still got a lot more coming your way on Firestone Race Day. There's Milka Dunno. We'll talk more about her when we come back to Kansas City.
Honda Grand Prix of St. Pete belongs to Team Penske and Helio Castroneves.
Those are our 3 winners so far. Will we get a 4th today? Well, we'll find out in just a matter of a couple of hours. We're just moments away from the command to start engines, and there's the number 23 car for Milka Dunno, the 35-year-old rookie from Caracas, Venezuela. There she is. But this is a debut that almost did not happen. How about it, Brienne Pedigo?
That's right, Marty. It's been a roller coaster week for Milka Dunno. It all started Monday. She was supposed to be testing in Kentucky. Well, that got rained out. Then Tuesday was supposed to be her rookie test here in Kansas, but her flight from Miami got grounded because of bad weather in Louisiana. So it was Wednesday before she even made it to Kansas, and more rain kept her from the racetrack. So by Thursday, guys, it looked like time was running out for Milka. Venezuelan Milka Dunno has proven she can win on the sports car circuit, and she had to draw from some of that past experience Thursday, which was her last possible chance to get in her rookie test before this weekend's race in Kansas. She finally took to the track just before noon with IndyCar technical director Kevin Blanche watching.
It's not about speed anymore. It's about her going out there and running the same line.
Right. No, I understand that.
I was hanging the line because I wasn't looking well, the way it was quicker.
That makes sense to me then. Okay. That's what I wanted to hear you say, is you were trying it on your own.
For more than 5 hours, Milka took part in a 4-phase test where both her speed and her line were closely monitored. Finally, around 5 o'clock, Milka was given the good news. Her IndyCar career will start this weekend in Kansas.
You did a really good job. See you Saturday morning.
Thank you so much.
Good job today.
Milka, tell me a little bit about how stressful your trip to Kansas has been.
It was very stressful. Many things happened. It was the weather, the airplane, everything. But finally, I did the test. It was a very good test, and now this is my first race.
Now, we know you've accomplished already one of your goals simply by qualifying for today's race. What are your expectations here?
I try to do the best. It's my first race. Still, I'm learning so much about the other driver, driving traffic, about the series. Everything is new for me. Just I try to do the best, keep the car, avoid every problem around.
Good luck today. Vince?
Well, Brianne, no driver has higher expectations for himself or herself than Danica Patrick, but Danica 14th at Miami, 8th at St. Petersburg, 11th at Japan. I know those results don't meet your expectations. What's been the most difficult part of handling that, if you will?
Well, I have a story for all of them. I know we don't have enough time to tell them, and I'm sure if anybody's read any reports, they can read some quotes. But it's just been unfortunate because like it gets frustrating after one of them. You think about the point situation then in the championship, and you just want to get on a good roll, especially now leading into Indy. I just want to have a good event and just get some breaks.
How important is it to have that momentum heading to the month of May in Indianapolis?
I can't imagine it hurts. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter at all, but I think it is whatever you put into your head. And no matter how the weekend goes, I'm not going to think it's going to make or break Indianapolis. But it's one of those things. I don't think it can hurt.
Danica Patrick, she'll start 10th today. Marty?
All right, thanks, Vince. Let's take a look at the history of women in IndyCar racing. A lot of folks believe Janet Guthrie was the very first to ever run at Indy. She was. But a couple of months earlier, if you remember, Arlene Hiss was the first woman ever to race in an IndyCar in the same year, 1976. She finished 14th in that event. We wanted to give her a tip of the cap as well. Let's bring Scott back in. You know, it's to the point where I liked what Danica said. It's no longer about women. We've got 3 of them today. Yes, it's another page of history, and we do make note of it. But I liked her comment. This is another driver. It's adding to the car count. That's the way I look at it. Somebody else I got to beat.
Absolutely, and that's what you think about all the time. If the car's in front of you, you want to pass that car. But as a rookie here, it doesn't matter if you're male or female. And the one thing that Milka said, you know something? I'm not used to this continuous 205, 210 miles an hour that is going around here at Kansas Motor Speedway. Very difficult. Also, she's going to have pit stops, which is going to be very difficult for her also, because you have to come in and pit stops here about 6 or 7 seconds. Not like sports car racing, where you're doing somewhere around 15 seconds. So it's going to be very difficult for her. And I think if she gets through today unscathed, that's what she's looking for.
Let's shift gears once again. We talked a little bit earlier about the fatigue factor, and one guy on our crew who has been waking up at 2 in the morning and unable to sleep is Jack Arute. Jack, you awake?
Yeah, Marty, I'm awake, but the sunglasses aren't for the Kansas sun. They're to hide the bags underneath my eyes. For all of us that made the 26,000-mile round-trip trek to Japan, it has turned our body clocks upside down. Now, if you're a driver in the starting field, all of them with the exception of Milka Dunno went over to Japan. So today, they have to operate at 10 tenths. And with that sort of jet lag, it is going to have an effect.
Well, I think it's tough for everybody coming back, for sure. You know, I got out of there Sunday, luckily, and just another day at home to get further acclimated.
First got home, you know, you wake up at the middle of the night, but somehow I managed to sleep. I don't usually have a hard time of going to sleep.
No, I'm struggling right now. Still waking up in the middle of the night. But it helped this morning with an 8 o'clock driver's meeting. I was actually awake for it for once.
Right away, as soon as we left Japan, we tried to back on the moment, back on the time zone over here in America, and I'm fine so far.
It hasn't really affected us. I mean, we got back, and I think it's the same for everybody. It's not really that big a deal.
Take little naps during the day if I'm a bit too tired, so it is affecting, but I don't think on the performance it's, you know, when you have a fast car, you get excited, you forget about that you're feeling tired.
Fellas, keep in mind, this is the first time in IndyCar history that a race has been scheduled 7 days after that Japan journey. But one thing that I can tell you is it's amazing what adrenaline can do as it is applied against sleep deprivation.
Jack, I'd give you a nap, but we need you for about another 2 hours, okay? All right. That's going to do it for this edition of Firestone Race Day. We're so glad that you joined us. Stay with us, because when we come back, it'll be time to give the command to start engines and go racing here in the 4th stop of the 2007 campaign. Marco Andretti already strapped in. And we welcome you live to Kansas Speedway, Kansas City, as we are getting ready for the 4th stop of 17 of the IndyCar Series for 2007. We're here for the Kansas Indy 300. And talk about close finishes, we'll take a look. Here are the closest in history, and as you can see, 2 of them belong to Kansas. But if you need one reason to stay with us for the next 2 hours, it is the fact that 5 of the 6 finishes here at Kansas have been less than 1 second. That's how close it has been. Let's go trackside for the command.
And now, race fans, it's time for those most famous words in motorsports. Please welcome Kansas Lottery Commissioner Joni Franklin to give that command.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engine!
So the engines have come to life on the 21 cars that make up our field here at Kansas Speedway. Let's talk about the points coming into this race. After 3 events, Dan Weldon has a 3-point margin over Tony Kanaan, 6 over Scott Dixon, and then it drops down a little bit further to Helio Castroneves.
Just shows you how competitive this series is right now, and the championship, Marty, is wide open for a lot of people.
You notice Marco Andretti, of course, with that crash at Motegi, that moved him down to 12th in the points. Let's take a look at the track here at Kansas Speedway.
One of the many tracks that we have on the series right now that's 1.5 miles in length, but, you know, maybe so much not a tall banking like we've had at places like Texas, because the banking here is just 15 degrees in the turns, so really your car has to handle if you're going to actually be able to run up front and win this race. Now, the banking on the front section and the back section are a little different there. Again, the front is 10.4 degrees, 5 degrees on the back, but you have to be flat out around here if you want a chance at running with the lead group.
All right, so the cars are beginning to roll out from the pit lane as they'll be on the first of 3 pace laps. And across the top of our screen, you'll be able to see the entire starting field. There is Tony Kanaan with his first pole of this year, 7th of his career. And as we mentioned, 21 total cars in the field today. And as they move out on this first pace lap, let's talk a little bit about the Ethanol Edge. Who do you give it to this week?
Well, great performance by Andretti Green Racing to get the pole for Tony Kanaan, his first amicable pole that he's had in quite a few times of trying it, I think since about 2005 at Indianapolis. But you have to give the edge right now to his engineer who helps with that, Eric Cowden. Anytime an engineer can give the car just some fine-tuning so the driver can go out, and there's Eric right there, some fine-tuning to be able to get the car to go flat around the racetrack, that's what the driver loves to do, and that's what Tony was able to do. He said, I just put my foot into it, and 3 laps flat, we got the job done.
And there is Eric up close. All right, let's talk about our 6 onboard cameras that we have, because one of them is in that car right there with Tony Kanaan, our pole sitter. We'll show you all 6 from left to right. It's Vitor Meira, Danica Patrick, Scott Dixon, Dan Weldon, TK, and Jeff Simmons. So as they continue the pace laps here, let's get you up to date on the final stories from pit lane. Vince Welch, you're up first.
Well, Marty, we've talked a lot about building momentum toward the Indianapolis 500 as we've gotten ready for this race today. Of course, we've had 3 race winners already, Dan Weldon, Helio Castroneves, and Tony Kanaan. But you don't have to have a race victory heading to Indianapolis to have momentum. Take Scott Dixon for Target Chip Ganassi Racing in the number 9 car. In 3 races this season, he has 2 second-place finishes and a 4th. I talked to his team today, and they said if they have another podium finish, they'll feel they have as much momentum heading to Indy as anyone. Brianne?
That's right. I'm in the Panther pit, and you guys, nobody has had more work to do this week than they did. Not only were they flying home from Japan and their flight got canceled, they had to drive from Chicago to Indy, but once they got home, they had to repair 2 race cars. So the team, if there's actually a diamond in the rough in this story, it is that the team, the crew, has really come together. They've gelled throughout this struggle, and Vitor Meira is more ready than ever to win, just to show them how hard they've been working. Jack?
Veterans of IndyCar competition will tell you that there are 2 seasons each and every year. The chase for the championship and then the Indianapolis 500. Well, these are the final left-hand turns here at Kansas before we get underway for the month of May at the greatest spectacle in racing. For the 91st rendition of the Indy 500, there are 3 teams that already have Big Mo on their side. Fellas, will we have a 4th team after this race in Kansas? Well, I guess you'll have to stay tuned.
And that's what we're about to find out. Let's talk about what we should watch.
Well, certainly it's going to be a speed versus mileage program here today. How fast do you want to go? How much fuel do you want to use? That's going to be some of the strategy for teams. Car balance, you have to go 200 laps around here because you're not going to win it by doing only 50 laps quick. We've seen that with Helio Castroneves last week at Motegi. Positive result might be different for Koski going into Indianapolis. He just wants to finish. Penske team, Ganassi team, they want to win.
So the pace car has pulled towards pit lane. Cars come up to speed, and the Kansas IndyCar 300 is... Saw the sparks on Tony Kanaan's car as he hit bottom, but he has already opened up about a 7-car length lead, and it is Dan Weldon that has moved into 2nd place, Sam Hornish 3rd, Helio Castroneves, Scott Dixon rounds out your top 5.
What a difference a year make. We've talked about this before because last year Andretti Green Racing was not very competitive on the 1.5-mile tracks. They worked very hard over the winter months. We talked about this before in other events, and lo and behold, guess what? Not only are they competitive running for the pole, but looks like they're going to have a shot at these types of tracks all year. And Marty, that's what you need if you want to have a shot at the championship.
Helio Castroneves has moved up to 3rd place now as the front 2 try and check out. There it is. It's Helio and Sam Hornish as they're running for position. Scott Dixon in the 5th spot. Let's give you Dario Franchitti in 6th. Marco Andretti has moved up 2 spots to 7th.
Now, both Penske cars that you're looking at right now, Helio's on the low side, and Sam Hornish in the Penske machine on the top right now is looking to go around on the top side, and right behind both of those is Scott Dixon. And here it goes with a run underneath Hornish.
And it looked like Sam may have gotten a little high there, opened the door, and Scott Dixon takes advantage of it and moves up.
Just watching that, Marty, I'm not sure that Sam could keep his car down on the low side of the racetrack in that lower groove where all the drivers prefer to run.
We're working lap 4 of 200. We'll keep an eye on Sam Hornish. It's unlike him to give you that much room on the racetrack. Meanwhile, the lead's starting to tighten up a little bit. In practice, Dan Weldon, even though he didn't qualify but 4th, he ran more 213-mile-an-hour laps than anybody else. But it was Tony Kanaan who ripped off the best lap in qualifying to get the pole. But here comes Dan.
You know, he said yesterday after qualifying, he said it was very disappointed. We felt that we had a faster car. And you know that doesn't sit very well with him at night. He was probably sleeping and trying to get to sleep probably, and just bothering him as it always does if he's not first in every session, every qualifying, and every race.
About a car length between 1st and 2nd. Here comes Weldon.
Look how close they are. Remember, 210 miles an hour on average around here. Marty, just being that close as they are, Kanaan's trying to stay down the low side, and then he comes off the turn, trying to run Weldon up just a little bit high to take that lane away from him. because he knows that now Weldon, after a couple of laps, his car is starting to go just a little bit quicker than Tony's.
And the thing we learned is they come side by side. Who's going to lead at the stripe? It's going to be Dan Weldon. So that's our first lead change. But here comes Tony right back on him.
Now, Tony seems to be quicker in turns 1 and 2. Dan seems to get better run going down the backstretch, looking for the draft. Tony's car is poking a hole in the air for Dan right now, but through 3 and 4, it seems like Dan, when he gets a run, has a quicker car coming off 4.
And talking to the drivers, they said that going through 3 and 4, the groove was a little bit tighter there than it was in 1 and 2.
Just a little bit narrower. The car wants to push up a little bit more, and Tony's just running him high. Tony's trying to get a run into turn 1, Marty, that's going to make him able to run a smooth line going through. I think his car is starting to push just a little bit. He looks like he's having trouble keeping it on the low side of the racetrack.
Here we go again. This time it's Weldon going to go up a little higher, and it looks like he may get the job done. Yes, he does. So coming across the stripe, Dan Weldon seals the deal here on lap 9 as he takes over first place, and that last lap at 2:09 as they're still running on full tanks.
Now, after we see this, like you said, 3-4 laps getting into it, and then obviously we're up to 9-10 laps, I think the thing that we're seeing is that the Ganassi car takes a couple of laps on a start to get up to speed. Kanaan's car is always fast in the very beginning, as he always is on starts and restarts. But it looks like Dan's car seems to come to him. It starts to work well for him after he starts to get those tires up to temperature and up to pressure.
So now as we get back through the field, that's Marco Andretti, and he is dropping back like a stone. He is now 17th. Sarah Fisher has just gotten around him. Remember, we had just mentioned a few laps ago, he had moved up to 7th from his 9th starting position. So obviously something going on in Marco's car. And Brienne Pettigo, what's the story?
Guys, in talking to his crew, they say he's struggling to get any kind of grip out on the racetrack. They're trying to figure it out right now, but Marco is telling them, I've got no grip.
Well, this is the warmest track temperature that we've had all weekend. Could that be the reason?
Well, it could be. You know, maybe you take a look at what you're going to do with as far as setup is concerned. You know, your springs, your shocks, all those things, the downforce level that's on the race car. But what he's complaining about right now is no grip. That means entering into the turn, through the middle of the turn, and coming out of the turn, the car just wants to slide out from underneath them. Frustrating because they're going to wait for a pit stop to probably make some changes to the car, tire pressures, wing angles, what have you, to see if they can improve that car for him.
All right, let's go back up front because there is Dan Weldon and Tony Kanaan. They are running 1 and 2, and it's about a second between the two of them. And then it's another 2 seconds back to Scott Dixon. And what's really interesting right now is that the top 5 have sort of spread out a little bit. As that is lap traffic already going a lap down. That was Marty Roth being passed. As we go side by side, we'll step aside, and you won't miss a thing as you take a look at the top 5 with Weldon, Kanaan, Dixon, Helio Castroneves, and Dario Franchitti. There's Dan Weldon, the man in control right now. He's the leader, but Tony Kanaan still has momentum from Motegi, Japan. We're at the Kansas IndyCar 300. Dan Weldon has checked out. He has already lapped through 17th place. Marco Andretti is on pit road. He's already a lap down in 19th. There's the margin from first to second. You can see how far back Tony Kanaan is. But here comes Marco Andretti. Also into the pit is Buddy Rice. He's a lap down as well. Brienne, what's going on?
As you guys, the 26 is pulling into its pit stall right now. They are going to put 4 new tires on and make some changes to the front wing, all to try and salvage this grip problem that Marco is struggling with out there on the racetrack. And he is out.
All right, so a couple of turns in the front wing to give him some more downforce as well. That's Marty Roth also pulling off a pit lane. He is a lap down at least. Now let's go back and check in with Sam Hornish because he too has dropped back. He is 12th, and that is A.J. Foyt the 4th right behind him. Here are the guys that are going the wrong direction. Marco 11 places in the wrong direction. Hornish 10. Matsura 3. And I want to get into an issue because you think that this is a direct result of the fact that there's no morning practice on race day.
You know, we don't have any of these warm-ups any longer. We used to have a 30-minute warm-up where we put all race cars on the racetrack on race morning to let them go out there and sort of get used to the conditions and also, most importantly, running in traffic. Now, these guys are getting out on the race racetrack right now and not having a chance of running in traffic. They haven't run since yesterday. So right now, I think they don't really know what the cars can work in these type of conditions. And you saw Marco Andretti come in, Marty. He took out about 2 turns of front wing, and that's because the car is so loose. If we had that morning warm-up, I got to believe that maybe they would know the sort of things that right for the track conditions. And we know we went through this last year, and our partner last year in the booth, Rusty Wallace, he didn't like them, but as an open-wheel driver, I was always sort of a fan of them.
All right, well, let's get more on what Sam Hornish's situation is. What are they saying down there, Jack?
Well, Marty, it's not what they're saying, it's the way it was said. You know, drivers like to be descriptive, and for Sam Hornish, he's picked up one of those southern affectations. He told Roger Penske the car is, and I quote, pushing like a pig. It's got such severe understeer that Roger Penske has already told Sam on the first pit stop they will adjust the ride heights.
Well, that's from his Busch Series experience that he's now gaining. In fact, he'll be racing next week at Richmond in the Busch Series. Right now, let's we did manage to record some of the team's audio. Let's go back and listen to some of this conversation between Sam and the team.
Just watching your line to fix it for you. Take your time here. Watch two. You can see those measures that are wrong with like tire pressures or anything. If not, you need to get the side pod extensions out and get them ready if there's a yellow. Are you mainly loose? Are you mainly loose? I was loose to start, but it's pushed like a pig now. Back with the front, back with the weight checker.
All right, he's talking about the side pod extensions. Let's explain what that is.
Well, first off, that's something that's actually running along the edge of the side pods of the cars, and it meets into the tire flips actually just in front of the rear wheels. Now, some teams are using both those items here, as you can see on the Penske cars. Maybe when they start to go through a pit stop, we'll try and mark out that. Right now, the side pods themselves, where it says Team Penske, right in front of the rear wheel, you actually see a little flip up, and that's actually on a lot of those cars. Those side pod extensions sort of run on top of those. That helps add downforce on the cars, and a lot of teams are running them because they worried about this warm conditions that we're going to have and a hot, slippery racetrack. The most important thing, though, is they need the balance on the race car. Car's pushing. He wants to push up towards the wall. He said it was loose at one time. I'm sort of glad, Marty, that I'm sitting in here watching this and not driving the race car right now.
There's a lot of ill-handling race cars out there right now, and we can tell you that there are 16 cars still on the lead lap as we are heading to go side by side. Dan Weldon's not having any problem. He has got a 2.7-second lead over Tony Kanaan. Scott Dixon is third. Helio Castroneves. Dario Franchitti has moved into the top 5. Back from side by side, that's Koski Matsuura getting ready to go a lap down at the hands of our leader. He is in 15th place, so now we have 14 cars on the lead lap. Dan Weldon in control by 1.6 seconds over Tony Kanaan. Third place is Scott Dixon. Let's get you up to speed if you're just tuning in, and first up, it'll be Jack Arute.
Your point leader is Dan Weldon in the Chip Ganassi target number 10. Your current race leader is the same Dan Weldon. The driver from England likes his race car. No adjustments anticipated on Weldon's car. He blew by the current leader, Tony Kanaan, a number of laps ago, and he is setting a torrid pace. Now, directly behind him, though, is the former pole sitter, Tony Kanaan, hot off a victory in Japan 1 week ago. Kanaan is generally very quick early in the race. The team doesn't have any explanation for the blazing speed put on by Weldon. They like the car. Meanwhile, Scott Dixon, who has been steady as he always has held on to the third position and is starting to close just a little bit on Tony Kanaan in that second spot. Dixon has been virtually silent on the radio. Now, for Helio Castroneves, well, the young Brazilian who has already won the Indianapolis 500 has told Tim Cindric, his strategist, that the car is a tick pushy. It means that the car has some understeer. They're adjusting it on board. They anticipate making maybe a wing adjustment on the next pit stop, which, Brienne, will be the first of the race.
Well, Dario Franchitti is running in 5th. And he couldn't be happier. John Anderson told me that he did make a slight adjustment in the cockpit, and it did exactly what he was expecting. So he and his teammate Danica Patrick, who's running in 7th, are really happy with their cars and not struggling with the grip issue that their teammate Marco Andretti is. Vince?
Thomas Scheckter is currently running 6th for Vision Racing in the number 2 car. Scheckter has had success here in the past. He won the pole at this race in 2002, and he led more than half of the race that year. He believes this is a racetrack in which he can win. You see, he's quite a bit behind the leader, but he says the car is coming to him. Nothing but positives from Thomas Scheckter up to this stage of the race. Brienne?
Actually, for Danica Patrick in car number 7, this has been a challenge all afternoon, guys. Now, 1 week ago, Danica finished 11th. She told and was quoted in the press all week that Kansas was going to be the opportunity for her to redeem herself. Thus far, they are still sorting out the Motorola Special. She has been mired back there in the middle of the pack, Vince.
Well, Jack, Ed Carpenter is running 8th. He is the teammate to Thomas Scheckter, so both of these cars are having a good run today. Scheckter in 6th and Ed Carpenter in 8th. And Carpenter in 3 starts here, his best finish is 14th, but he too says that his car is running very well. He feels very comfortable in the car. This is a team that believes they can legitimately post 3 cars in the top 10 today.
Boy, he is flying right now, and he's putting a move on Danica, trying to go on the high side there. So as Ed Carpenter tries it, can't get it done as he has to back out of the throttle. And let's go back up front. That is Dan Weldon. Let's round it out for you, because after Ed Carpenter in 9th, it's Vitor Meira. In 10th, it's Darren Manning. There is Sam Hornish. Well, he is a lap down in 13th now. That's right. It's Scott Sharp, Jeff Simmons, and then Sam Hornish in 13th. And Tony Kanaan just went by him. They need a yellow.
Not only that, but I'm just amazed. How often do you ever see Sam Hornish ever go down a lap on an oval track from the car that's not working for him? Not very often. That's not very Penske-like.
And I have to say, both of us thought that he might be that 4th different winner coming into today.
Oh, they did look strong in practice and looked like the car was working for him, but it goes along to some of the things that we were saying about, you know, you have to run consistently here, and that's one of the things to watch for. You got to run strong for 200 laps.
And did you see Marco Andretti as he got blown by both those cars? And there's Marco just struggling. I mean, he is so slow out on the racetrack right now. And it's just been a disappointing sophomore season for Marco Andretti. Meanwhile, Dan Weldon continues in control of this race. You haven't missed anything up front. Marco is running at 175 miles an hour right now.
And usually in this situation, that if the league looks at this, the president, Brian Barnhart, says he's 10 miles an hour off the pace. As we see Milka Duna right now just completed her first pit stop. She's in the right-hand part of your screen, and she's now leaving onto the front of the pit lane here and off to the racetrack. But anytime you're more than 10 miles an hour off the pace, the IRL generally wants you to come in, make a change to the car, and then possibly...
Well, Milka...
Well, hang on.
Reset the fuel, Milka. Reset the fuel.
How neat is this? Pancho Carter, years of experience, worked with Sam Hornish Jr., and now he is passing along his information to Milka Duna to help her get up to speed after the pit stop, Marty.
Let's get more on Milka, Vince.
Well, Scott, you hit it. Pancho Carter, who has worked with Sam Hornish and Dan Weldon, and he is literally coaching Milka Duna around the track almost every single lap. He's being very positive with her, telling her she's doing a good job, but he has reminded her on multiple occasions that she does need to stay within 10 miles an hour of the leaders. So if there's been one prompt that Pancho Carter has given her more than any other, it's been flat out, Milka, flat out. He's been reminding her over and over, she's got to keep the fuel on the floor. Guys?
All right, so here comes Elio Castroneves, I'm sorry, as it's the number 3, not the number 6. Castroneves pits out of 8th position, putting a period on Milka as she goes another lap down to our race leader. Of course, history-making day here. If you stay with us on ESPN2, coming up next, it'll be NHRA drag racing and a history-making event there. It'll be Father John Forrest, and I'm not talking about him being a priest. He's the dad of Ashley Forrest, his 24-year-old daughter. They're going to go head-to-head in first-round action. Another history-making day. Let's get more on Elio Castroneves, Jackaroo.
Well, we told you he had a little bit of a push during that pit stop. The way they made the adjustment, quite simply, put some wing in the front and tried to make the adjustment. Dan Weldon, Dario Franchitti on pit road. Weldon's crew getting ready to go to work in just about a lap, guys.
In fact, Franchitti is already back out. So here on lap 48, everybody's about having to run out of methanol, and it looks like we're on board with Dan Weldon, and he is making his way towards pit lane.
Just where we thought, somewhere around 40 to 46 laps, down to 60 miles an hour, entering pit lane.
When we get down here, we're wide open. Straight in, stop on the sign.
You know what I noticed different? Remember Motegi? Tony Kanaan could run 4 more laps than Dan Weldon. Tony Kanaan is also in on this very lap. Let's go to Jackaroo.
As Kanaan gets ready to pit, Dan Weldon has hit his pit marks, and the team will go to work. Not anticipating any changes. Trouble with Tony Kanaan and Danica Patrick. They have come together, and that is a lengthy and costly situation for your pole sitter. Guys,
we're watching this, and Danica also hung up in this. And how does something like this happen between teammates?
Well, it shouldn't be between teammates because just miscommunication. What you try to do is sometimes stagger your teammates coming in, especially if your pit boxes are side to each, as this situation is. But right now it looked like Tony Kanaan was taking his steering wheel off.
Let's check in again with Jack.
Quick stop for Scott Dixon in the target energizer special. He pulls back out. Nominal stop, fellas, which means 22 gallons of ethanol and a change of Firestone tires. No chassis adjustments.
Well, there is suspension broken on the left front on Tony Kanaan's car, and what a terrible, terrible.
Okay, now let's look at this. If you're going to see these guys working on the left front side over here, what they're looking for right now is that collision has turned around and broken the tie rod. And so you're going to see these guys turn around, remove the tie rod. They have new tie rods in the pit box. They'll turn around and replace this as quick as possible. No doubt that he's going to end up losing laps, but just a collision between the two teammate cars. You can see the broken piece was in the hand of the mechanic at that point in time.
All right, let's go back and take another look at this because we've got a different angle, another angle on it, and here was Danica's stop first.
Now she's going to be finished. Now her crew member on the right front is waving her out without looking down pit lane. That's just a miscommunication, guys, because what ends up happening in that situation is he wants to get her out, obviously, as quickly as possible, but he has to watch to see who's coming along down pit road and coming into the pit box, especially the pit box that's directly in front, which is their teammate.
All right, let's take a look at the onboard. There is Tony still behind the cockpit. Here's what had happened as he was coming in.
Now he's doing the right thing. He's coming in, and sure enough, there's Danica. She's trying to leave. She's also doing the right thing. But the most important thing is, from a team perspective, is that when you're coming in, the car that's about ready to come out has to really give way to the car that's coming in. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And Tony Kanaan was in the right in that situation. And Danica Patrick just turned around and got let out. Now, we're going to go on Danica Patrick's onboard. And as we start to look forward, here's the fuelers doing their work. She's watching her right front tire changer. We're not going to see it by this view, but obviously something is now stopped. And you see the 7-Eleven crew, they're turning around, and they know that they have to help their driver. What we need to do is have a shot of that, of showing the right front tire changer, and he'll see that he is not turning around and watching what's going on coming down pit lane.
All right, Danica is back out on the track. She is a lap down in 13th. In fact, we only have 6 cars on the lead lap right now, led by Dan Weldon, Scott Dixon, then Elio Castroneves, Dario Franchitti, and Thomas Schechter. And Ed Carpenter, your 6th and final car on the lead lap. We're going side by side. You saw the piece of debris on side-by-side that was picked up by the Delphi safety crew. That is the reason for our first caution. And with all the criticism that was leveled against NASCAR, that's what we were trying to do for you, so that you would see that there really was something out there on the racetrack. That's Tony Kanaan. He is back out on the race course right now after sustaining that damage in the pit lane incident, as he is now 18th. 8 laps down. Let's get more from Jack Arute.
Yeah, Marty, they had to effect a change of the radius rods on the left front, but Tony Kanaan, forgive him if he is hot. During a radio transmission while they were making the repairs, and I am not paraphrasing, I am quoting, Tony Kanaan told his crew, if this ever happens again, I will never drive for you, ever. So you can tell sometimes emotions run high. For this Brazilian, a car that was so good and a miscue on pit road has put him down here in Kansas.
Well, and it's like you said, it should not happen when you're talking about teammates. I mean, we've seen it happen a lot of times with competing teams.
Absolutely. That's the key thing, Marty. You hit it right in the head. Competing teams, because you don't know what's going on, but when it's teammates, you absolutely should have some communication going on there. And Tony Kanaan said to me just the other day, he said, you know something, this is the best start I've had in the series since 2004, and he won the championship in 2004, Marty, and I know that was his focus here this weekend.
Well, and there is Danica in to top off, and there are the Penske machines. Jack, give us an update on Team Penske.
Yeah, let's start with Elio Castroneves because he's already been done. They took a turn of wing out of the front of the car. Meanwhile, what they are doing for Sam Hornish is adjusting that ride height. They did it with tire pressure, but now they're taking the time to do it mechanically. Then they'll change all 4 tires. This is classic Roger Penske. Don't panic, just go to work.
Come back. Are you ready?
Really what's happening here, Jack, is they're trying to get an understanding on the car also about what's happening with the car, how it can be fixed. Because they're using now, they're not going to win this race. They're going to use this a little bit as a test session because they want to get ready for Indianapolis.
And Sam is still 1 lap down, but as we go back on board with Danica Patrick, you mentioned Tony Kanaan winning the championship 2004. He completed every lap of that year. Coming into this race, he had completed every lap until this incident with Danica. And there he is in 18th spot. Danica is in 12th right now. Let's go back and take another look at this and see if we can see where the signal went wrong.
Well, right now you have everybody doing their work on the car. Now let's stop this for a second because what we're going to see is the right front tire changer right here. He's not even looking down the pit road. What he needs to be doing is looking all the way and seeing what cars are coming in. He should also have radio transmission from his team manager telling him that Kanaan is coming in. He knows that Kanaan is the pit box in front of him. That is just miscommunication, something you just don't generally see on the Andretti Green Racing team, but that might be what cost Tony Kanaan the championship right there, Marty.
All right, there's Danica's car, and we picked up this radio transmission from her team.
They're on E6. Hold, just get your bob, tools where you need them, hold, wheels are done, hold.
Why couldn't I go straight?
I'm not sure you're allowed to go through their pit equipment. And you're doing a great job. Let's get back in. A lot of time to go.
See, that's coming from Kim Green, who's managing her car, and he tells her to go. So he needs to also be looking down pit road, and he there again should know, because all the equipment's out for Tony, that Tony's car is coming in. In this situation, as you can see, Kim Green sitting there on the wall. It's a difficult situation, something they'll go back and replay and look at and shop and make sure they don't make that mistake again.
Sam Hornish back into top off and get one more final adjustment on his car. He's back out. Remember, he is still a lap down. And so Danica, as she is in 12th, Tony Kanaan is in 18th, Marco Andretti is in 19th. Not a good day so far. Dario Franchitti is in 3rd. So as we get ready to go back to green flag racing, we're still under caution. Now I'm getting word that Marco Andretti has called it a day, Brianne.
That's right. Marco has climbed out of the 26 car. Marco, you were struggling with a grip problem, I was told, all day. Is that ultimately what ended the race for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, I mean, I'm scared to death. I couldn't tell you the problem. I really couldn't. It felt like my front and rear wings were on upside down. I mean, I had zero grip. I mean, I was lifting at the start-finish line to go into 1. I mean, you know, and we need to be flat out there. And it's, again, it's a bit embarrassing, but I can't wait for Indy.
Was this the same problem you were struggling with at Homestead?
It's hard to say because we don't know what the problem is. I mean, for me, as a pure feel, yeah. I mean, it felt, I think, worse than Homestead. I think just because we tried to stay out longer, but it was miserable.
How do you refocus now going into the month of May?
Well, I mean, you almost at this point have to forget about points. I mean, let's go win the Indy 500.
Sorry about your day.
Thanks.
And you know what? He's right. As we go back to green flag racing, the championship is done for him. It is over. With this many DNFs, there's no way he can come back. Meanwhile, out on the racetrack, Dan Weldon picks up right where he left off. His teammate Scott Dixon is in 2nd place. Dario Franchitti, the last real strong hope right now for Andretti Green. He has dropped to 4th. Thomas Scheckter has moved up to 3rd. Let's get more from Jack Arute.
You know, fellas, what a hard taskmaster Dan Weldon can be to his crew. Not settling for anything but 110%. Throughout the course of this race, all the radio transmissions between Dan and his crew have had a little bit of an edge to them. Finally, during that caution, Dan said, "Hey, guys, you don't have to talk to me like I'm stressed out. I really, really am okay."
I think that may be part of that fatigue factor we're talking about. Look at this. That is Tony Kanaan. He is the sandwich. That's Elio Castroneves on the high side. Now Castroneves is in 6th spot. He is the last of the lead cars on the lead lap. That's Alex Barron, and all of a sudden here comes Tony Kanaan. He's getting a little racy, but the problem is he is 8 laps down.
Oh, he's certainly got fire in his belly right now. There's no doubt about that. But 8 laps down is a tall order to come back and even try and finish on the lead lap, let alone even get close to winning this thing. And right now, he's just driving out of frustration.
If he gets back on the lead lap, that's driver of the year right there.
Century.
Yeah.
Century, yeah.
Okay. All right. And we're not making fun of poor Tony, because obviously coming off Motegi, he had high hopes, and especially after getting his 7th career pole. Let's go back up to 3rd place right now and check in on Thomas Scheckter, because let's give him a nod, because he has moved up through this field and done extremely well as he started 7th and has been very, little twitch right there. Let's get more on what's going on with Vision Racing from Vince Welch.
Well, Thomas Scheckter told Larry Curry, their team manager, earlier this week, he said, I can win, and I am ready to win a race for you. And Larry Curry said, I want you to win a race for yourself as much as you want it for the team. Certainly this team has made its strides, so to speak. They've had a 3rd car with Anthony Foyt, but really Thomas Scheckter is the man spearheading this 3-headed team. But you've got to give a shout out to Ed Carpenter as well, who's running very strong here today. Guys, this is a team that's making major strides this season.
Yeah, they're running 3rd and 5th right now, and the last win for Thomas was in 05 at Texas, so it gives you an idea how long the drought has been for him. You mentioned about Ed Carpenter, the 20 car. He is running in 5th right now. Dario Franchitti is the man in 4th, and there is Ed.
And here's a team that the 3 cars that Vince is mentioning right now, they're talking about adding a 4th car at Indianapolis, and obviously Townsend Bell has been with that team in the past, so we don't know for certain if it's Townsend, but we do hear that there's a 4th car on the block for that team at Indianapolis.
Well, Ed, so far, remember his career best was last year at our season finale at Chicago, where he finished 5th. That's where he is running currently after starting 13th. Now he is a total of about 6.6 seconds behind our race leader Dan Weldon. For Weldon, he is now the only driver to lead all 4 races this season, and that is Scott Dixon in 2nd place, going around the lap traffic of the number 8 of Scott Sharp. Sharp is the first car 1 lap down in 7th. So meanwhile, we'll check in again with Dan Weldon. Right now, he has this race in control, and one of his biggest opponents for the championship, last year's champion, Sam Hornish, is nowhere to be found. All right, take a look at our race leader. Dan Weldon has a 2.4 second lead here at Kansas, at the Kansas IndyCar 300. He's led 73 of the 82 laps. And in fact, let's get you caught up if you've just tuned in, as we've just passed the bottom of the hour about 6-7 minutes ago. It is Weldon in front as he got around our pole sitter, Tony Kanaan, early in the race. But it was not a great day so far for Sam Hornish. He has dropped back. He is now running 11th, 1 lap down with an ill-handling car. It's even worse for Marco Andretti. In 3 of the races now, he's out of this one. Best he can finish is like 19th. He has a 20th and a 16th as well this year. And then here's team trouble. That's Danica Patrick being told to go as Tony Kanaan, her teammates, coming in. Kanaan suffered damage to the left front tie rod and ended up going about 4 laps, or now 8 laps down. And there is Danica finally getting out on the track. As we come back out, there is Dan Weldon. Let's bring you up to date on the other 2 women in this race. Sarah Fisher is running 14th. Danica, we should tell you, is 13th, right in front of her. That is 1 lap down for Danica, and then 2 laps down for Sarah. And then Milka Dunno is running in 16th position right now, and Milka is 4 laps down.
It's been impressive, though, the speed from both those Target Chip Ganassi cars. Just looking at 211, 210 miles an hour, and you know something? That's not a good day in the cockpit right now. Not only did she have the problem in the pit lane, Marty, but that car right now is not very comfortable for her because she's seesawing at the steering wheel. And there's Milka Dunno, who's actually just...
out, even when she moves up the bank a little bit, you got to still run flat out.
That's good. Poncho Carter saying you're flat out. Just keep moving it, keep running.
She's run her last lap at 2:03. Her best lap was at 2:07. Vince, what's the latest from Milka's pit?
Well, Marty, the main thing with Milka is they've been encouraging her and prompting her to just stay at a steady pace and keep her line consistent. Most importantly for Milka Dono today is to go the distance, get as much seat time as possible. But Pancho Carter is coaching her around the track, keeping her updated on the line that she's running and the traffic that she's coming up on or that is coming up upon her. But he's very, very religious about reminding her to keep flat out around the track. That's the only way she's going to get better.
And that car behind her is Sarah Fisher. Sarah in 14th, 2 laps down to our race leader. Milka is 4 laps down. And there is Sarah with the AMCO transmissions. Dallara?
Now, Milka is used to doing endurance racing because she's won in endurance racing in the Grand Am Series at Homestead Miami Speedway. She's won 3 events with this situation. She's also finished 2nd earlier this year at the Daytona 24 Hours. It's the highest finishing position ever by a female in any type of racing at the Daytona International Speedway. But as much as this is endurance racing for her, she will definitely be worn out by the day is over. Going around here at a constant speed of 205, 210 miles an hour, going around here flat out and somebody talking in your ear all the time, this will be a wearing down experience for her. She'll be glad the day is over, and this one's underneath her belt.
So while she continues to make laps around this track, you saw about 5 miles an hour slower than our race leader. Dan Weldon at 2:11 and change. And Weldon has now led 81 of the 90 laps that we have run. Back on board with Dan there. And he is across the line again. His margin over Scott Dixon is 2.7 seconds, and then it drops back to 8 seconds to Thomas Schechter as he's down the backstretch. And give you an idea, Dario Franchitti 11.9 seconds behind in 4th.
You know, it's funny, Dan said yesterday that he thinks that this race is going to come down to a battle the last couple of laps, a battle in turn 4, and a battle coming from turn 4 to the start and finish line. But right now, he just got everybody left behind. He doesn't, what he said yesterday is not even, he doesn't have to worry about that today.
Well, and I'm sure he's basing it on history. As we mentioned at the very beginning of the show, 5 of the 6 events here at Kansas have been decided by 1 second or less. So, I mean, that's close.
And we talked also about not having that morning warm-up, which we think might play a part in it. And don't forget, there was a truck race here last night. And what ended up happening is that these guys had not been on the track until or after that truck race at all. So that might play part in this also.
They do run a different style of rubber. The trucks are on Goodyear, and we're on Firestone tires in the IndyCar series, but not nearly as much the difference that we've noticed when the Hoosier tires are out there with some of the other series. We're going to step aside. You'll go side by side. You won't miss a thing as Dan Weldon is in control. There's your top 5 as we still have 6 cars on the lead lap. Well, you didn't miss a thing on side by side. Dan Weldon, the reason he was pitting, he had a tire going down, and just as he pulls into pit lane, you saw what happened to Ed Carpenter as he hit the wall.
You know, Dan would have went down 1 lap because it was still under green at that point in time. He wasn't ready for his pit stop, although he was probably within about 8 or 10 laps of pitting. But with this yellow coming out because of the crash here of Ed Carpenter's car, you see stop there. And there's, let's have a look at this. Ed is actually the second last car in your frame there and just gets a little bit loose. The back end comes around and the back end goes up and hits the wall, the safer barrier. It looks like a little bit of a light contact. You can see the rear wing is actually askew now. It's all pushed up. The attenuator itself would actually take a lot of the brunt of the pressure when he hits straight on like that going in rearwards. But a big break, as you mentioned, Marty, for Dan Weldon, because now he should not go down a lap.
No, and everybody else still has to pit because there is the remains of the crash as Ed Carpenter tries to extricate himself. And a tough break for Ed. Remember, he was running in the 5th spot at that point. And so our second caution comes out at lap number 102 as we are just past the halfway point.
Between 1 and 2.
Jaggeroo, we're on board with Dan Weldon. What was the conversation on the radio?
Well, actually, what I found very fascinating is Dan Weldon didn't know. It was his engineer and the telemetry, the data acquisition guy, or the DAG for this team, that knew that the right rear tire was going down. He radioed to Weldon. Weldon then pulled down onto the apron. In fact, during that replay of the Ed Carpenter crash, you could see the red car of Weldon down low. But here's what I think sometimes you're better to be lucky than good. For Dan Weldon, as he pulled onto pit road, he was able to complete completely affect the change of that tire because he had already committed to pit road before the caution came out. So there's no penalty. And you know what? Like I said, I think if I'm Chip Ganassi right now, I have just exhaled for the first time in about 4 minutes.
Well, and you pointed out he probably would have gone a lap down. So if this happens just 1 lap later, after he comes back out and he is a lap down, he's going to stay there.
And in the situation, if there is a yellow, for instance, and you're stuck out there, the other side of that rule is that you are allowed to come into the pit lane, change the tire if it is going flat, so you're not going to disable the car out on the circuit itself. You cannot take fuel on, but when the pits are open, then you do have to come in there and complete another stop and add your fuel at that point in time.
So let's reset it for you. It is Scott Dixon first, Helio Castroneves second, Dan Weldon is in third, and then it's Thomas Scheckter and Dario Franchitti rounding out your top 5, and they are the only 5 on the lead lap.
Now, you say Dixon is in first and Castroneves is in second. As soon as the pits are open, those guys will go in for service. Dan Weldon will resume the lead, and he obviously has had the service of 4 fresh Firestone Firehawk tires and 22 gallons of ethanol fuel, so he will be good to go.
And we got word that Dario Franchitti actually turned down into pit lane, but then continued through. So he's at the back of this long line, and he still is going to need service. There he is. Now he is still shown in 5th position and on the lead lap, but there's a long way between him and first place. Now he'll get to come in here as pit lane has finally opened.
Your second place car, Marty, Scott Dixon, comes down to get service from his crew. Dixon has been unable to close on Dan Weldon. Adam Rosaleri and Ricky Davis take care of the front end. Davis completes and signals for Dixon to go back out. All that Mike Hull has been telling Scott all day, be patient, be patient.
Well, we'll see how well the pit crews really did, because I was trying to keep an eye on especially Dario Franchitti, because he was at that last of that long line, to see if he was able to pick up any of those spots. Meanwhile, work still continues down on Sam Hornish's car as they are trying to get him back on the lead lap. Sam is shown in 7th position the last time by the stripe, but he is still a lap down. We'll get it all sorted out while you go side by side here in our second yellow. Dan Weldon has now led 397 out of 604 laps this season. So we are back, still under our second caution here at Kansas Speedway, lap 106 of 200. You'll see across the top of the screen the current running order, although actually Alex Barron is the first car in line. Oh, they did. They just waved him around. We were waiting for that wave around to happen. So there is Dan Weldon now leading the line. And there is second place, Thomas Scheckter for Vision Racing. You heard earlier, it was Thomas saying, I am ready to win. Maybe today is the day. Here's third place. So we move a little bit further back. It's Scott Dixon. And then there is Scott Sharp. He is first car a lead lap down in 6th. And there is Helio Castroneves. He is currently listed in 4th position. And then about 13 cars back in this stretch is Dario Franchitti. He is the last car on the lead lap in 5th.
Now the pace car is pulling off in the front section to allow the drivers know it's now time to get ready to take the green flag and get set. Dan Weldon immediately just puts his foot on the gas, maybe a little too quick, takes a bit of a lead going through turns 1 and 2, and he sets the pace. He's supposed to be around 80 miles an hour. Now everybody starts to catch up behind him, and Thomas Scheckter is a very aggressive driver. Dan Weldon knows that. He knows he needs a good start. He wants to keep Thomas behind him.
They're in turn 3 right now. Dan Weldon.
Green flag.
You heard it. We're back to green flag racing here at the Kansas Speedway.
Oh, Marty, and Scheckter got a poor start because what ended up happening was that Dixon got a great run, anticipated it correctly. Great teamwork between the Target Chip Ganassi cars, and they're now going to start to run 1-2.
And here comes Dixon. He says, hey, partner, I want to take a shot at the lead.
Absolutely, you're a race car driver, you have a teammate, but you certainly want to try and start leading laps and putting your mark on this race a little bit. Weldon's sort of been running the guys real high going through the line here sometimes. He's doing the same thing with Scott Dixon there a moment ago.
Well, you got to remember, Scott's tired of being in second place. He finished second at Homestead.
Size him up. Let's use it. Let's pull away with it.
He was second at St. Pete. His worst race was the last one at Motegi, where he finished 4th.
A great driver, probably one of the finest drivers right now on a road course, and has done great on ovals, obviously. But the key thing for these two drivers, they need to run nose to tail and just start to pull away for the remaining group.
Let's get more on Scott Dixon. Jack?
It's been a kind of crazy weekend for Scott Dixon, guys. When he went out to qualify yesterday, he did not have any sort of telemetry to tell him what speed, as he begins to work over his teammate now, Dan Weldon. In fact, he thought he had turned a 211 instead of a 213. He started berating his performance on the radio, and all of a sudden, Mike Holman got on the air and said, "What are you talking about? It's a 213. He goes, "Oops, my bad."
Just sort of lost the field maybe for a second or two. Who knows? Right now he's flying. I mean, these two are running 211. Everybody else, Thomas Schechter's at 210 on down through the rest of our top 5, Castroneves and Dario Franchitti. So they are starting to check out on the other guys.
They certainly have the speed, and Castroneves running those 211s, as you mentioned. He seems like he's got a fast car, but he's going to need a little bit of help. Maybe he can get behind Schechter, and maybe Schechter will work with him just a little bit to try and catch the 2 Ganassi cars that are up in front. This is really starting to become a team sport in the sense that you need 2 drivers up there in the same team to work together to try to run nose to tail in the draft to try to make your car just a little bit quicker. Now, if Castroneves can get around Schechter, maybe he can actually start to push the air up in front, because his car does seem a little faster, Marty, but Schechter's smart. He wants to stay in the bottom right now, but what he does need to do is to think about the big picture here, just not this lap that he's actually running over the next 10 laps.
And obviously, Thomas Schechter, the man in front of him, not his teammate. His teammate, Sam Hornish, is 11th place right now, a lap down.
And the third car you see on your screen is Scott Sharp, as you mentioned, who's in 6th place, who's 1 lap down, driving the Catrone car. He wants to stay in the hunt with all these guys right now, because if he has an opportunity to maybe get his lap back, he wants to get himself back on the lead lap if possible.
Well, and Scott had his best run last time out over at Motegi, Japan, where he did finish in 6th. So same place that he ended up in Motegi is where he is right now. The only difference is he's 1 lap down.
And it's very frustrating as a driver, Marty, because when you're running almost the same pace as the leaders, but you've lost a lap somewhere in this race here, you just think, boy, if I didn't get down a lap, the car's working well now, I've got the same pace as the leaders, I just wish that I was on the lead lap.
We're working lap 115 of 200. You see the new fast lap by Scott Dixon at 211.8 miles an hour. And you're on board with Scott. Let's go for a complete ride with Scott when we get a chance. Guys, there you go. And watch the wheel, how smooth he is. And we'll sit back and let you go for a ride.
We're down to 211. Cars behind us 208. Row 9. Hopefully another long green segment here.
The car just moving around a little bit, Marty, but impressive, not taking your foot off the throttle, as we can see by the Firestone telemetry.
What I notice is coming out of 2, he drifts a little higher than Dan does, and also, especially coming out of 3 and 4, he drifts a little higher.
Remember, he's going to get a little bit of disturbed air off of Dan's car in front. What a neat thing to do to ride along with that.
All right, so now let's get an idea of what's happened with the teammates. They're running in lockstep, several laps difference between the two. Tony Kanaan is ahead of Danica on the racetrack, but Tony right now is 8 laps down. Danica is 1 lap down. Danica in 11th place, Kanaan 16th, and he's pulling away from her.
Boy, I want to be in the trailer after this race is over and just start to listen to a little bit of that conversation that's going to go on between not only your crew members, your team manager, but also just between the 2 crews themselves on that little mishap on pit lane earlier today.
Jack, you got more?
Yeah, for the first time, the PR staff for Andretti Green Racing has approached me and warned me that it is highly unlikely that we will be able to avail ourselves of an interview with Danica or Tony Kanaan after the race. When I asked why, I said they have been called to a meeting immediately after the race with Michael Andretti.
Well, it's not their fault.
I'm going to say, what do you want the drivers to show up for? I mean, she got called out by Kim Green. The right front tire changer's not watching what's coming down pit road. She's just told to go, she goes. She's the driver. And Tony, I mean, you're not going to hire a driver that doesn't get pissed off when something goes wrong. He wants to win races. I mean, Michael's hired the guy because he's a competitor. That just flat doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we'll keep our eyes and cameras open and ready for that at the end of the race. We've still got a lot of race to run, though. We're working lap 121 of 200 as you're on board with Dan Weldon right now. And you can see that first and second, Weldon and Scott Dixon have checked out on Helio Castroneves, Thomas Scheckter, and Dario Franchitti, the rest on the top 5. All right, let's take a look at our race here at Kansas. 4th stop of the 17 on the IndyCar season. Dan Weldon and Scott Dixon running in lockstep on lap 127 of 200 in first and second respectively. They have about 4 seconds over Helio Castroneves, who, as you can see by this camera shot, is way back there. And there is Helio Castroneves. So Helio is followed closely by Thomas Scheckter, who is in 4th place. And then Dario Franchitti rounds out the top 5. He is in the 27 car as he tries to catch up to the Weldon-Dixon freight train right now. And there is Dario. Those are the only 5 cars on the lead lap. But what has become interesting is you're on board with Dan Weldon. We've been keeping an eye on number 6, Sam Hornish Jr. He has gotten around Jeff Simmons, Scott Sharp, Vitor Meira, and he is now in 6th spot. He is the lead car, 1 lap down.
And he's actually just coming up behind his teammate in the Team Penske machine, Helio Castroneves, which is actually just ahead of him. And he's been doing some great work and never give up attitude. Jack Arute, you have more?
Well, indeed I do, Scott. You know, we always admire the way Roger Penske exhibits patience under adversity. But we certainly have seen it today. This car was not good for Sam Hornish. They made major adjustments, changing the ride heights on 3 separate occasions. Just about 5 laps ago, Roger very calmly radioed to his driver, "Your car is back where it should be. Now go get him." And since then, Sam Hornish has been on a tear.
Well, Sam was 14th on lap 45. In just over 80 laps, he's climbed back to 6th, but he's somehow got to climb back on that lead lap.
Well, that's the key thing. But, you know, the most important thing he knows for now, looking on his digital dash that's in front of him when he's sitting inside the car, that his speed is 210.6 miles an hour, the same speed as the leaders. And there again, he puts himself in the same frame of mind as Scott Sharp. You know, I find myself 1 lap down, but my car is actually now back up to speed. You just hate it as a driver when you do have a fast car and you just cannot actually be on the lead lap. And we're now back with our leaders with Dan Weldon and Scott Dixon. These two are just running nose to tail, trying to conserve a little bit of fuel. I'm sure that's what Dixon's doing right now. And he's also thinking, how do I make my car better? So after the next pit stop, what changes do I need to make so I can actually have a faster car than Weldon? Because clearly Weldon is a little faster.
And right now in control, albeit just over his teammate by 2-3 car lengths. Let's get more on Dan Weldon's strategy. What's going on, Jack?
You know, Marty, being in control, it may be debatable whether it's the car on point or the car chasing. These 2 teammates. Scott Dixon has been conserving fuel, as Scott Goodyear alluded to, and has been really not trying to parry and thrust with his teammate Dan Weldon. So this is a case of a little bit of fuel conservation for the guy that is playing the chasee as he continues to run in the 2nd spot.
Well, this happened to Dan back at Motegi, Japan. It was Tony Kanaan that went 4 laps further each pit stop, and that was the difference in that final round of pit stops. If they took a page out of that book, maybe Scott Dixon's going to roll the same dice.
You know, and Dixon's very quiet. You know, both those drivers are very quiet, deep in thought, but Scott Dixon himself, as we look over at the Chip Ganassi group on the right-hand side, that's Chip in the middle and his engineer Andy Brown on the right-hand side for Dan Weldon. That group right now is just watching everything unfold. They're starting to calculate when they need to bring the car in for its next pit stop. And overall, they look like they certainly have everything under control. And there's Dario Franchitti in the Canadian Club car on your top side. Going around, number 2, Scheckter.
And that is for 4th position. What's happening with Thomas Scheckter, Vince?
Well, Scheckter reports that the car is handling fine. He just doesn't feel as though he's got the speed, obviously, to compete with the guys up front. You saw Franchitti making the move around him. I just spoke with Larry Curry a moment ago. He said, we're just trying to stay in touch with the leaders, stay on the lead lap. As long as we stay on the lead lap, our position is going to be good, and then you just got to wait and see how it plays out at the end. 63 laps, but obviously this team's going to need a little misfortune for the guys up front if it's to contend for the win today.
Well, so far, let's run through this. Your top two cars are Chip Ganassi Racing, and you can see from Thomas's record there, we mentioned it earlier, his last win at Texas. So there is the Chip Ganassi Racing stable running first and second. Then it's Team Penske in third with Helio Castroneves, and he is now 6 seconds behind, and that's what it looks like on the racetrack. It's literally the entire front straightaway. And then in fourth is AGR, Andretti Green Racing, with Dario Franchitti, and then Vision Racing with Thomas Scheckter, rounding out top 5, the only 5 cars on the lead lap. And there is Dario just crossing the start-finish line as well. We're going to step aside as you go side by side with Target Chip Ganassi Racing running 1-2. So far for 2007, Dan Weldon has had some brilliant moments. One was coming back from 9th to 1st to take the win at Homestead. But in St. Petersburg, a little bump and run from Helio Castroneves. He didn't win that one. And then Japan, a little fuel economy and a lack of a radio. That you saw him talking on the helmet. Here was the difference. Tony Kanaan was able to go 4 laps further, and that gave him a quicker pit stop and got him out for the win. And he went in for a team meeting. But he has the points lead, and right now he also has the race lead here at Kansas. He has not won here. He's finished second before, as we are on lap 146 of 200, and he will do anything and everything to win.
I feel that I'm talented enough with the team that I'm in to be able to win weekend in, weekend out. And I'm not going to be around as long as the team. It's easy for them to get drivers. So for me, I have to make sure in my career that when I'm retired, and hopefully very successfully retired, I want to know for myself that I gave everything that I possibly could, and I tried to get the most out of everybody that I work with. So there's nothing I can look back on and say, you know what, I didn't do that properly.
That's why he's won the championship, Marty. That's why he's won the Indianapolis 500, and that's why Chip Ganassi hired him, because Dan Weldon is so focused, and you might say he's a little bit abrasive with his guys, but you know something? He just wants everything out of the car, everything out of the people that he works with, because he gives 110%. But I say it again, that's why Chip Ganassi hired them.
All right, there is first and second. Now let's drop back to Helio Castroneves. There he comes around the turn 2 onto the back straightaway. Dario Franchitti in the 27 car, as he too is trying to catch up. Sam Hornish is in that mix in the 6. He is 1 lap down in 6th. I'm wondering about strategy. Remember at Motegi, Japan, we saw the 27 car of Dario Franchitti literally lean it out just shy of putting it on the yellow mapping when they're under yellow. And he said he didn't like it, but it paid dividends for him. They had no other way to put themselves back into contention.
Oh, absolutely. As a race car driver, you never want to run lean on the fuel trim because it slows the engine down, doesn't give you as much horsepower. You cannot be as competitive as you want. But right now, he's smart. He's sitting beside Helio Castroneves, and he's going to take maybe a run at him. I thought he might sit back there and try to save just a little bit of fuel. But that was maybe what he might want to do. But obviously, this is going to be for a position. So as a race car driver, yeah, you want to go around him, but maybe the team has been telling him to hold back on the fuel trim.
Well, could Helio be holding back as well? Let's talk to Brianne Pettigo. She's covering that pit. Brianne?
Guys, Dario Franchitti has had excellent fuel mileage all day, but they've told him now, once he gets up to the 3 of Helio Castroneves, to let him pull him around the track and save on some fuel. He's getting ready to come in just a lap or so, and John Anderson says they're just going to massage the fuel tank and make no changes.
Actually, that's great information, Brianne. Thank you, because that is why the 27, the Canadian club car of Dario Franchitti, wanted to get around Castroneves, because if he's getting ready to pit, he certainly wants to be in down pit lane ahead of Castroneves.
Now at 152, you're going to have to lean it out if you want to make it the rest of the way.
It's going to be very, very close unless there is a yellow and you have that opportunity to turn back the fuel mileage, run the engine just a little bit lean.
And there is, as we go split screen there, that is Thomas Scheckter. So our 5th place car peels off first. Vince?
Thomas Scheckter has had a very good run today, guys. This is his third stop. They made a wing adjustment his first stop, but they made no changes the second stop, and they're making no changes to the car in this stop. That gives you an indication of how well they hit the setup with Thomas Schechter's car. Says it's not fast enough to race with the leaders, but it's good enough for a top 5.
There's Dario Franchitti as he makes his way down pit lane. We can also tell you that we're seeing Helio Castroneves and Sam Hornish, who's a lap down in 6th, into pit lane. Let's go to Jack.
Sam Hornish is putting on a set of used tires, 5 laps on those tires, while his teammate Helio Castroneves gets a set of new Firestone Firehawks. And Sam Hornish is out and away, and Roger Penske told him we still have plenty of time. Go get him. Meanwhile, the Target Chip Ganassi crew for Dan Weldon getting ready for work, because Dan Weldon, the man from England, is ready to pull onto pit road.
In fact, he's on pit lane right now.
Okay, Dan, wide open down here, straight in, stop on the side. Just a normal stop here.
Now Weldon being vectored in, fellas. They'll count him down. 4,
5,
3, 2, 1. Weldon hits the marks. It's time to go to work. Now remember, this is when a mistake can be costly. Thus far, it's been perfect. No changes. Scott Dixon is pulling onto pit road, the man that was running in 2nd before these green flag pit stops. It's his teammate, and it'll be clear sailing for Scott Dixon. Let's see if they take a full load, 22 gallons of fuel. They go to work, changing the tires. It looks like, yes, they're going to fill and pack that car. He is off and away, Phyllis.
Here's my question for you, Scott. If Dixon was running on a fuel conservation, he only got 1 extra lap. That's really not that much of an advantage if you're going for 1 more stop. Unless Dan has to go splash and go, and he can now lean this out to the end.
Well, they're going to have to come up with that strategy right now. And we saw when we talked about the engineers before that are sitting back on the war wagons down pit lane. Those are the guys that are making the fuel numbers work. And we saw it obviously at Motegi with Brian Page turning around, giving the correct fuel numbers and telling Tony Kanaan exactly where to run the fuel trim inside the car, inside the cockpit. There's a little knob on top of the steering wheel that they just turn from, say, 0 down to a percentage of lean. And these guys were running about 10 or 12% lean before. Now it's going to be up to each individual team and their engineer to come up with some type of a strategy to make it all the way to lap 200 so they don't have to stop again. This is going to be very interesting.
Well, what is also interesting is through the pit stops, as we are cycling through, as we were doing this under green, Scott Dixon has the race lead over Dan Weldon by 2.4 seconds. You're on board with Dixon. So something happened either on pit in or pit out. Dixon got a big advantage.
We saw it the other weekend with actually Tony Kanaan. He stayed out 1 lap longer, kept the speed up on the circuit, got into the pit lane very quickly, made his change and got back out. Scott Dixon has done the same thing. Anytime you have a clear lap, you put your foot on the gas and you absolutely drive it as hard as you can. The in lap, as far as coming in off turn 3 into the pit lane, service work, and then getting out back up to the track and up to top speed is so important.
We're getting word from race officials that Scott Dixon is going to get a drive-through penalty for turning into pit lane off of turn 4, not being down on the apron as they were instructed in the driver's meeting.
Well, advantage, I think. Yeah, I guess you could say that's a huge advantage, you know. And they certainly always know that. Now watch this. Here he comes up to turn 3. You know, was he going to run out of fuel? I think he might be running out of fuel. Car's quiet. Now he should have come in a little bit earlier on the apron off of turn number 3, ran that complete apron, and there's where we got the advantage from. So remember I said it was important to have a good in lap coming in off the high speed and getting into the pit lane quicker? Well, he took it to the extreme.
And obviously IndyCar officials have said that's going to be a no-no, so Scott Dixon's chance of winning this race just suffered a very serious blow. Now he has not answered the black flag yet, and they just waved it to him again as he crosses start finish. So when he does come in, Dan Weldon will be your race leader, and there is a huge gap back to what is now 3rd place but will soon be 2nd place, Dario Franchitti.
Well, there's no doubt that when he does answer the black flag and comes into the pit lane for a drive-through or a stop and go. It's up to the IRL officials to decide what they're going to do as far as a penalty is concerned. With Franchitti being about 15 seconds back, I don't think that Dixon's going to be able to come off the track, in the pit lane, and back up to speed.
Whoa! Here he comes, and this time he pulls in very early. Jack Arute, what was going on down there?
Well, fellas, you surmised that what was going to happen is that he was going to run out of fuel and he had to duck on the pit road. My call just confirmed that. It will be a pass-through penalty for Scott Dixon. But this could be the longest lap of Scott Dixon's day because you have to do it at 60 miles an hour. Guys, that's like crawling after doing 210.
Well, and you can see that Dan Weldon is on the backstretch right now and into turn 3 and 4, and he could end up a lap down if be careful going out here, because here comes Dan Weldon at the stripe there, so he will not go a lap down, but it's going to be awfully close by the time he gets up to speed. So Dan Weldon has retaken the race lead. And Scott Dixon has dropped all the way down to 4th, in fact to 5th, the last car on the lead lap. Well, the momentum right now belongs solely to the man on the right side of your screen, Dan Weldon, number 10, as he has an 11-second lead over Dario Franchitti. Then it's Helio Castroneves 12 seconds back. Thomas Scheckter a total of 18 behind the race leader. And let's get more on our top 5 that are on the lead lap. Jack Arute, you're up.
Well, for 28-year-old Dan Weldon, this has been a race that's been the best of times and a couple of scary times. He felt the hot breath of Scott Dixon for quite some time, his teammate, but now he has a sizable advantage over second place. The car is running good, and I just checked with his team. Chip Ganassi tells me no more scheduled stops on pit road. Brienne?
I'm in Franchitti's pit, and guys, they are keeping him out. They will not come in for any kind of off-strategy pit stop. They think that he can go through the distance, but they're not absolutely positive. They're kind of hoping that Weldon runs out of fuel. Jack?
Brienne, third place, Helio Castroneves is having more of a drive like he's had all season. A car that is not absolutely perfect, but a car that is drivable. He and Tim Cindric and the crew have been hard at work adjusting on this car all afternoon. They, like the first 2 cars, do not plan to pull onto pit road. Vince?
Jack, Thomas Scheckter is running 4th. Scheckter on his radio asking who is around him, who's behind him. The team is letting him know that Scott Dixon is behind him and coming strong, and he is the driver that Scheckter will have to challenge for position. Scheckter can stay out on fuel the rest of the way. They're trying hard to stay in touch with the leaders here, but you see 17 seconds behind the leader. Jack?
The key to success as a driver is to channel aggression and transfer it to your right foot. That's exactly what Scott Dixon is doing right now. Frustrated with a drive-through penalty for not signaling going into the pits soon enough. He is now running as fast as he can. No need to conserve fuel because they do think they have plenty of time and plenty of fuel on board. Guys?
And we'll tell you that Sam Hornish is still 6th, 1 lap down, and there is 7th place, Danica Patrick. This would be her best finish of the year if she stays there. Of course, she was tangled up with her teammate Tony Kanaan a little bit earlier. Tony's 15th, about 8 laps down. What about the other 2 women in our field? Well, Danica, as we mentioned, she is running in 7th. Sarah Fisher is in 13th place right now, as she is 4 laps down, and Milka Dunno is in 14th, 6 laps down.
But I think she's actually fulfilling her goal today of actually getting out there and completing the race, running as many laps as possible, getting the experience of actually going through pit stops in open wheel type race cars, getting back out and running on the high banking here. Yes, she's run at Daytona in a 24-hour car, but in a sports car. But this is at sustained speed. This is all at 205, 210 miles an hour all the time.
You saw Sarah there in the blue and white Amco transmissions machine. There she is, as she is running in 13th. And of course, Sarah, last year, her best finish here was 2003, where she was 11th. So she's not probably going to do much better than that, because, as we said, she's several laps down. And
as we saw, Darren Manning had just passed her in the ABC machine. Another team that they keep saying at Indianapolis Motor Speedway that will be adding cars to their fleet for the race at Indianapolis. And the rumor that I keep hearing around the garage, Marty, is possibly Al Unser Jr. could be sitting in an A.J. Foyt car at the Indianapolis 500 next month.
So that gives you an update on several of the other cars that are still out there making laps, but not in contention for the race win, because right now it is all about Dan Weldon. He is 10 seconds ahead of Dario Franchitti, and Helio Castroneves is third. We go side by side. All right, let's check in here at Kansas City. We've got Dan Weldon comfortably in front, 11.3 seconds in front of Dario Franchitti and Helio Castroneves. Time for us to check in with Jack Arute for this week's edition of the Valvoline Track Tip. Jack?
Yeah, Marty, and let's talk a little bit about what Sam Hornish encountered all afternoon. For Hornish, it was very important to change the ride height of the car. That's the distance between pavement and the main chassis of the race car. Well, the reason is because of this slight tunnel effect on Indy cars called the under tray. This creates an airflow and a change of air pressure. It is also one of the key elements to creating downforce. And downforce was something that Sam Hornish didn't have enough of.
All right, thanks, Jack. Good explanation. Gives everybody at home an idea of just exactly what they were dealing with out there on the racetrack. Dan Weldon hasn't had to deal with much. His radios work fine, unlike it did at Motegi. There's been no miscue in the pits like there was at Homestead, but he had the car there that he could just drive back in 9 laps, or 11 laps, from 9th all the way up to 1st. He's cruising right now, and the only question we have is he cruising well enough that he doesn't even have to come in for a splash of fuel? You saw the Firestone lap leaders, and he is well ahead. He's now up to 165.
And that's what we said earlier in the race, that was one of the things to watch for in the speed versus mileage. Can he continue the speed that he has and get good enough mileage to be able to get right to the end of this race, or will he have to start to throttle back just a little bit and maybe have Dario Franchitti start to sneak up on him? That's something that we can continue watching for. But you know, we also talked about having a positive result, and without a doubt, this will be a positive result for Target Chip Ganassi going into the month of May, and that's exactly what Dan Weldon wants. It will be great for him to carry that into the Indianapolis 500.
10 laps to go here at the 1.5-mile Kansas Speedway, as it is now Dan Weldon 11.7 seconds, and we'll give you an idea of what that looks like on the racetrack as Dario Franchitti comes down and makes his way into turn number 3. There he goes through the screen right there. So I mean, it's awfully long between 11 seconds out on this racetrack. We are on pace for a race record. There is Dario as he crosses the stripe. The race record used to be 180.5 miles an hour. Right now we are running an average of 188 miles an hour. And it's all because of him right there. It's his fault. Let's go back and take a look at the battle for 9th. That is Jeff Simmons. He has gotten around A.J. Foyt, the 4th. And here comes Foyt trying the high side to get back around him again. That is for position. Vince, you've got more on Jeff Simmons?
Marty, this is a big race for the ethanol team, not only coming off their season best finish last week at Japan of 8th, but with it being the ethanol car in the heartland of America where so much corn is produced, which of course one of the main components in the ethanol fuel. This was a very important race for this Ray Hall Letterman team, and they've been extremely pleased with the effort that Jeff Simmons has given him, as you see him battling there with the Vision car. So Simmons, after his 8th place finish at Japan, staring down another top 10 here today.
But with 7 laps to go, we are on a pace right now to tie for the fewest cautions. I don't want to jinx anything, but it is the fact. 2 is the lowest we've ever had here at Kansas. And right now, Dan Weldon does not want to see any kind of caution flag come out. He just blows past Vitor Meira. Meira's a lap down in 8th.
He's just in a different planet. The speed that he has over a lot of people in the field right now. 2:11 was the last speed. He just continues to click off those 2:11s like it's nothing.
All right, we talked about momentum at the beginning of this broadcast, throughout this broadcast. With this kind of convincing performance, what does it do for him? What does it do for the team?
I think it's just a positive in every way for the Target Chip Ganassi team going into the Indianapolis 500. And look at the wiggling that's going on just in front of him. You hear Dan Weldon get off the throttle because he really didn't want to take a chance right there with Danica Patrick just in front of her. Has her car is mishandling for her because she's just starting to waddle that thing up the racetrack. Now, smartly, she starts to run the high line and looks like Dan's going to get a chance to go underneath. She's just fighting that race car. Spotter's probably telling her, the leader's in your mirrors. Wisely, she breaks the throttle. To go back, I think it's everything for Dan Weldon and Target Chip Ganassi to go into Indianapolis, but you know something, this has got to be a little bit of a lull for the Penske team because they are certainly not as competitive on these oval tracks right now as maybe they were a year ago, Marty.
You mentioned it back at Motegi. You said you were beginning to get concerned about this team on the 1.5-mile ovals.
And they certainly seem like they're struggling to find just a little bit of speed. When Andretti Green Racing looks like they're starting to pick up the speed. Obviously, we've had the mishap in the pit lane today with Tony Kanaan, who could just very well be one of the guys that's fighting here for the lead in his 7-Eleven machine, but who's obviously having that pit lane incident with his teammate Danica Patrick.
To give you an idea, while you watch this continuing, Tony Kanaan's last lap was 210. Whoa, and we've got yellow on the racetrack and a crash in turn 4, and Scott Sharp, who was running in 12th, has hit the wall and brought out the caution with 2 laps remaining.
Now, as in this, we will not run extra laps and start to do what they do, those green-white checkered scenarios like they do in some other serials. So this looks like this will probably end up running and finishing under caution.
So a tough break for Scott Sharp. He had gotten as high as 6th place, but after the last round of pit stops, obviously something went backwards for him as far as the setup on the car. He had dropped back to 12th, and we've got a view of what happened to him as the Delphi safety crew tries to get him extricated from the car.
Now, Scott is the car that's in the very rear of that group and running by himself. Yes, there's some cars up in front. Probably a little bit of, we call that disturbed air, dirty air coming off of it, but without a doubt.
Nice job.
And as we come back, you see that Dan Weldon crosses under the checkered, under yellow.
Good stops. Great stops, guys.
Becomes our first 2-time winner this season. His 13th career win. Moves him into 2nd all-time behind Sam Hornish.
To both the number 9 crew and the 10 crew. Unlucky for the 9 crew, but fantastic job by Target Chip Ganassi Racing. Proud of you guys. Thank you.
You heard Dan congratulating the team. Let's talk to the man who owns the team, Chip Ganassi. Jack?
What did you think of that congratulations speech your driver just gave to you and your crew?
Well, we had a great day. It was obviously the Target team, you know. We had a flawless day, and that's what happens when you have a flawless day. Very, very good.
Chip, what sort of a message does this send on behalf of your team going into the greatest spectacle in racing?
Well, I told Dan, we want to go into the month of May. We want to go into Indianapolis solidly in the points. And, I think the other teams know that we can be competitive there. But, you still got to go the distance, but it's a nice little momentum booster. That's about all right now.
And a big change from Japan. 1 week ago, we interviewed Dan Weldon. He was in a closed-door session. Looks like things got turned around.
Well, at least today they did.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Here's a stat for you. Dan Weldon has now led 485 out of 700 laps this season. That's just shy of 70%.
Very, very impressive. Remember, just last year, though, we had a situation between those two teams where they led a lot of laps, and it was Penske that seemed to be doing the dominating on this oval.
Well, and that's what we noticed last year, and this is what's different. Remember at Homestead, they had the mishap in the pits. They came back from it to win the race. Yes, they had the problem in Motegi, but it didn't destroy their entire race. They finished 2nd. Here, they have absolutely no problems whatsoever and end up taking home the win.
And they didn't have problems, but everybody else had problems on the racetrack, sometimes by their own doing and sometimes by somebody else's or in the pit lane.
So we'll wait for Dan as he climbs out of the cockpit of the car, and got to get that helmet off, Dan. We can't talk to you underneath that thing. As he gets the salute from the crowd and the fireworks, the confetti fire. as he picks up, as we said, career win number 13, as this is his first win here at Kansas. Let's send it down to the Victory Lane celebration with Vince Welch.
Well, Marty, as you said, his first win here at Kansas, but he's been runner-up here the last 2 years, so certainly one that Dan Weldon has been close to getting. Finally got it today, and it was a dominating performance today. Dan, what made your car so good today and made it look so easy?
You know, both the 10 crew and the number 9 crew from Target Chip Ganassi Racing did a fantastic job. I mean, it's good. I've been very frustrated since Motegi, and I wanted to prove a point, and you know, the car was fantastic, absolutely fantastic, and you know, yet again the Honda performed like it always does.
What was the point you wanted to prove after Motegi?
I just get a little frustrated sometimes. You know, I'm in this business to win, and you know, I think everybody works so hard at Target Chip Ganassi Racing. You know, the families in particular are putting up with you know, all the boys that are working late nights, and you know, it's tough on them, and it's, you know, it's not just everybody that works at Target Chip Ganassi Racing, it's you know, the families as well that put up with us, because we got a big race coming up next, and that's a real one I want to win.
Let's talk about that race coming up next and what this win for you, not just this victory, the points lead, etc. How does that give you momentum as you head toward Indianapolis?
You know, it just puts everybody within the right mindset. I think going into Indianapolis, you have enough time and enough time to build up momentum. But you know, when you go in with the championship lead, you know, feel pretty good about it. But you know, I think everybody at Target will be real happy, and we're just proud to be here. But the fans at Kansas, I think, you know, made it right for us today, because the stands were absolutely packed. So the IndyCar Series is rocking yet again.
Do you feel like you're the driver to beat at the Indy 500?
No, I don't, to be honest. And that's the thing about the IndyCar Series. There's so many people that are performing well right now. It's going to be tough. And as you know, I mean, I've seen, you know, the good moments of Indianapolis where I've had a good car and I've had a dominant car and lost there. So, you know, it's all about that history and tradition of Indy, and I want to taste the milk again.
Go get a shave. I haven't ever seen you unshaven at a race.
You know, we've got razors coming from Target, so I should be good by tonight.
Marty?
I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I think he's got to be the favorite.
You know, got to be one of the favorites. The team has been so strong here for the last little while. That's been very impressive, as we see some conversation going on now between Tony Kanaan and Michael Andretti. We saw that mishap just a little bit earlier between teammates, between Danica Patrick and Tony Kanaan, so that will probably be a very interesting discussion, as we talked about before back in the trailer. And Jack Arute, you have some more for us down below?
Well, Dario Franchitti logs in another one, getting a little congratulations from Michael Andretti, who certainly had to approach this entire outcome with a little bit of mixed emotion. Now, 1 week ago, Dario, you said that whole conservation thing you wanted to throw out the window. Was it a little easier today?
It was a little bit more fun. You know, you have to be careful what you wish for, because about halfway through that last run, I was saying, where is everybody? There's no traffic, there's nothing. And then I got a lot of traffic there right towards the end, and the sharp accident happened right in front of me, so that was a little bit too interesting for the last couple of laps there.
I know you had a couple of moments to check in with Tony Kanaan after the incident on pit road, just in fact about 2 minutes ago. What did he tell you about it?
He just said Danica and him got together in pit road. I don't know if it was Danica's spotter or, you know, whoever's clearing her out of the pit. I don't know what happened there, but I'm just happy the Canadian club car is it's looking fast right now in the lead up to Indy, and that's what we need.
Yeah, and you didn't get called to the office with Michael like Danica and TK have.
No, that's good. That's always a nice thing. I spoke to Brian Barnhart last night. I don't really need to speak to him again today.
There you go. Congratulations there.
Guys, I'm here with third place finisher Helio Castroneves. Helio, another solid finish for you. This has got to feel good going into Indy.
Oh, absolutely. That's what we came here for. We said, listen, let's be a little more conservative. Make sure hopefully we finish in the top 3, and we did it. And we made sure that we had a car to finish like right there. It was difficult, but we did it. So great momentum for Indy. I can't wait to go there.
So we had quite a few miscues and team problems out on pit lane today. You guys didn't, but other teams were struggling with that. Do you think people are already thinking about Indy?
Oh, maybe, or I guess everything's so quick coming back from Japan, and everything is in a rush. You have to give credit. I mean, or give a little credit for those guys. That unfortunately it's been so much in a rush. But I think everybody's also thinking Indy, and everything that works here, or a lot of things that works here, it might work at Indy. And so far, we're happy.
Well, I know the Indianapolis 500, just with all the mystere that surrounds it and the history, the rich tradition, messes with drivers' heads a lot. But as a past winner, does it take some of the pressure off of you?
Oh, no, I'm not thinking about, you know, just because I won there, everything relaxed. I do believe everybody has the same mentality to go over there and do their best. I do believe everybody's saving everything, the best equipment they have, to go over there as well. So, you know, month of May is right there. That's what's going to start it. We want to finish here well to make sure the good momentum to go for Indy, and that's what we did. So right now, just make sure we do well.
Well, you certainly accomplished a great finish here today, and we'll be keeping our eye on you in Indy. Jack?
Well, you talk about a team that may be peaking at just the right time. It's led by Thomas Scheckter along with A.J. Foyt and Ed Carpenter. Good drive today. What sort of a feeling does it give you going into the Indy 500?
Yeah, it gives us a good feeling. We still a little bit off the guys in front, but, you know, a great performance from everybody. Engineer gave me a great call, made a big difference. But we've been working a little bit in the wind tunnel, hopefully for Indy, and the next time we come to a mile and a half, we'll be a little bit better.
Yeah, you talk about the wind tunnel on Monday, or I believe it was Monday and Tuesday of this week. Wind tunnel for the first time for this operation. Not enough time to get it in place for this race. How much of an edge do you think that's going to give you for the Indy 500?
You know, it's step by step. You know, these guys are 10 steps ahead, and I think we just notched away too. Obviously, we couldn't get those parts out for this race, but still, we did a great job. And looking forward to Indy, I think, you know, some of the parts will come out there, and hopefully we get a little bit more speed.
All right, it's been a while since you won. How hungry are you?
Sorry?
It's been a while since you won. How hungry are you?
Oh, I can't even say. I can't even put it into words. But you know, this is an operation, like you said, that's definitely growing, and we need to work at it, and hopefully soon we'll be in victory lane.
We'll see you at Indianapolis.
Thank you.
The fifth fastest race in IndyCar Series history at 188 miles an hour for the average. 4 different teams in the top 5. They included Chip Ganassi with 2 cars, Andretti Green, Penske, and Vision Racing. And there is the celebration and the trophy presentation still going on down in Victory Lane here at the Kansas Speedway. Meanwhile, the conversation continues between Danica Patrick and her team as there is Danica talking to Michael Andretti. We'll see if we can get a word with her. The team told us don't expect anything, but we'll try for you. Stay with us. We're all in back here at the Kansas Speedway. As you might expect, the celebration continues down in Victory Lane as Dan Weldon is interviewed. And let's also give a tip of the hat to Milka Dunno in her debut. She started 21st and finished 7th, and there she is with Jack Arute.
Well, and you know, Marty, it's almost as good as a victory. When I talked to Milka yesterday after qualifying for her first IndyCar Series event, you told me all you wanted to do was finish. Well, congratulations, you did that. I noticed you're a little dizzy after going around the corners. Tell me a little bit about it.
Just adjusting to everything, just by sitting like this. But I am very happy with the results, because in the first round, I was crazy on the street. It was impossible to drive in traffic. It's when I lost the most time. But after, when I made 2 pit stop, my engineer made fantastic job, adjust the car, and after I start to recover and keep the speed all the time. It was the moment that I recovered because the car was very good outside, inside, behind the car. It's experience now. I learned from today. It was a good experience, tough experience.
Well, if you had to explain to some friends what it was like out there that have never driven an IndyCar, what would you say?
How is to drive? Oh, he's very tough, guys. Really tough. At the end, you finish like you are in the roller coaster. Wow!
Milka, Indianapolis is up next. You're going to try and become another woman, another female to crack the Indy 500 field in its 91-year history. What do you think, and what does Indianapolis and the 500 mean to you?
It's going to be a great event because it is the famous Indianapolis. It's a race that I wanted to be there for a long time ago, and now I am part of the event. No, I passed my test. I did my first race. Now I go to Indianapolis.
Things are pretty good.
Yeah.
Guys, you can see the smile on her face. She's a happy camper. She's run her first Indy race and is on her way to the 500.
Yeah, I sort of like, she said it was like a roller coaster. It's definitely an e-ticket ride out there. And I want to clarify, I meant to say, I know what I meant to say. I think it came out wrong. She started 21st, climbed 7 positions to 14th. I think I accidentally put her in 7th place, and that would be where Danica Patrick finished today, 1 lap down. All right, we mentioned Danica. We're still trying to get an interview with her and or Tony Kanaan. And let's take a look as the car is being pushed back towards the garage area and show you what happened early in the race as Tony Kanaan was coming in.
Now, Danica Patrick is the car on the left that was trying to come out of the pit box. And obviously, Tony Kanaan is trying to get into his team group that is actually there in the 7-Eleven green uniforms. And as we watch it again, the work is going on in Danica's car. Now, the right front tire changer should be actually also looking down the pit lane, but we also heard on the radio that Kim Green, the team manager running the car for Danica Patrick, said that it's clear, go, 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 when indeed it was not. And obviously this is what ended up happening. Now, the contact with the car did not damage Danica's car, but it broke the left front toe link for the Tony Kanaan car, and that really was the cause that put him down many laps. They had to repair that, Marty.
And Brienne Pedigo has caught up with Danica.
That's right, guys. I've got Danica down here. Okay, starting off on a positive note, you finished 7th. That's the best finish so far this season. That's got to feel good, building momentum going into Indy.
I said as we came in, I said, you know, good job, guys, good stops today, but unfortunately, that was our best result of the year. I mean, 7th's not good. It's not good at all, but you know, we did all right today. We obviously had some problems in the pits, and our car was tough to drive in the middle of the race, but you know, managed to get 7th, and I guess I don't know how far I was down, 10th, 15th, who knows, but we came back.
Now, okay, walk me through that pit stop. What happened from your point of view?
I might actually be the worst person to ask, because sitting in the car, you listen and you look for when to go. You know, you know, Kim in pit lane here, he's on my radio, he's saying when to go, and Poppy on my right front, my mechanic, my crew chief, he tells me exactly when to go too. So I'm listening to them. They said go. Obviously, there, you know, TK was there, and I feel bad because, you know, Tony had a really fast car for sure, but it lost both of us a chance to win the race for AGR, and that's never what we want. And I know that, you know, Mike's disappointed and everybody's disappointed, because not only did it happen in pit lane, and that's horrible, but it happened within the team. And, you know, they're normally really, really good about it and pitting people on different laps, but unfortunately that one really collided.
Now, we've talked a bit about the guys on your team and the kind of camaraderie between all 4 of you. How will you refocus and get that sense of team back before Indy?
We're always a team. There's no problem there. You know, we're all, I mean, I haven't seen Tony yet, but, you know, I'm going to tell him I really feel bad. I know you had a good car. I was just going when I was supposed to, when I was told to go, and I'm sorry that it happened. But, you know, I mean, there's nothing much I could have done, you know. I mean, if I waited, you know, until the whole pit lane was cleared out to go, then that's not realistic. So, you know, I was just doing what I was told. But we're a team. Things happen, and you know, I'm sure there'll be some talks that go on over the next week just as to how that did happen to fix it. But there's no love lost, and we'll get it back.
Well, good luck to you at Indy. We'll definitely be keeping our eye on you there. Thanks. Jack?
Well, Brienne, sometimes a day is just one that you want to forget. But I think for Sam Hornish, the performance today was as difficult to drive as you may have had in recent memory. What did you learn from it?
You know, it was a terrible day for us, and in a lot of respects. You know, the car was way off at the beginning of the run, beginning of the race, and you know, we lost a lap there. But you know, the thing that makes me really proud of it is that we stuck together as a team. The guys made good decisions on what we should change on the car during the pit stops. Nobody got down. You know, Roger, you know, tried to keep everybody as calm down as possible, which is pretty tough. When
I already had to chastise you a little bit on the radio to calm down too.
You know, it's one of those things. It's not an easy thing when you're dropping back like that and you're not having a good day. But you know, Roger is the captain. He's the one that makes sure that you know, he keeps us all in check, and that's what it takes a lot of times. But I'm really proud of all the guys at Team Penske. They did a great job making sure that, you know, we kept it out there and that we made good decisions. And we're, you know, pretty much the 3rd fastest car after we got the car handling again. It was just unfortunate that we lost that lap, but you really my hat's off to those guys. And I'm just glad that we finished the race, because the way it was looking at the beginning, I didn't know if we were going to bring it home in one piece or a bunch of pieces. And I turned more right that time, the first couple laps, than I did left, so it was tough.
Hey, this is the first year that the IndyCar Series has done away with the morning practice session, the opportunity after qualifying to check out the car and especially see what race conditions are like. How do you weigh in? Is that a good idea, or would you like to see it maybe at least looked at one more time?
All the times when I think that we've got too much time, and I think everybody's catching up because we're getting extra practice, another practice session. This year I feel like we need more every time we go out, and it's a little bit frustrating, but that's the rule, and we have to make better decisions on what we're going to do as far as how we're going to set up the car, how aggressive we are going to be with downforce. And we just made a bad decision today, and unfortunately we didn't get any yellows in the first 70 laps that could help us out from going a lap down. But it's a lesson learned. It's a 6th place finish. It's not terrible. We got, I think, 14 more races to go this year, so we've got a long time to go, and I think that we can still win this championship. We just need to be patient, make sure we don't make mistakes.
And a race that's coming up that you're the defending champion, not a bad thing to have going on your side.
If you only lead one lap all year and win one race all year, that's the one to do. So I mean, I'm looking forward to going back there, and Indianapolis has been a dream of mine, just to go there and race someday, let alone win it. And now that I've won, I'm super excited about being able to go back, try it out again, see if we can't make it 2 in a row, and then we'll have a whole lot of pressure on us coming back for trying to make it 3.
Hey guys, I just want to let you know that for Sam and I, it may be 6 o'clock Kansas time, but it's really 6 a.m. Japan time. So he and I are going to go have some bacon and eggs, okay?
Okay, you guys have earned it. A hard day for both of you, as Sam, as he mentioned, finished 6th. And as the celebration continues for Dan Weldon, as the hat dance continues with the photos, and we'll step aside, but we still have more coming to you from Kansas and the Kansas Speedway. Well, back here at the Kansas Speedway, as you can see the city off into the distance, that's how clear it is. It's a 20-minute drive to downtown, and let's check the final results. We'll show you the full field, see where your favorite driver ended up. Of course, we had 5 cars on the lead lap, led by Dan Weldon, the only man so far to win 2 times this year in 2007. And as we mentioned, Vankitti, Castroneves, Dixon, and Schechter on the lead lap. Then Sam Hornish, the first car, 1 lap down. Then Danica Patrick, Vitor Meira, A.J. Foyt the 4th, that ties his career best in 9th. Jeff Simmons and Darren Manning, they were all 2 laps down. Sarah Fisher, 4 laps down, as was Scott Sharp as a result of that last crash, just a few laps from the finish. Milka Dono, as we mentioned, 14th. Tony Kanaan, after the mishap, comes home in 15th. Alex Barron in 16th. Then Ed Carpenter crashed out. Koski Matsura withdrew her earlier, as did Marco Andretti, Buddy Rice, and Marty Roth finished in 21st. What's it do to the points? Well, there is a bit of a shakeup. Not at the top spot. It's going to be controlled by Dan Weldon, but Helio Castroneves will move up 1 spot, as he will jump up to 3rd. Scott Dixon will jump back up into 2nd place, and it'll be Weldon leading by 27 over Dixon, 35 over Helio Castroneves. Also, Dario Franchitti picks up another spot. He moves up to 4th. The big loser here, obviously, Tony Kanaan, because of finishing so far down. He drops 3 to 5th. And there you see the top 12. Stay with us. We've still got more coming from Kansas.
Michael and Marco Andretti running 1 and 2.
Here goes Marco Andretti.
Hey, Dad, watch this. Can a teenager win in Indianapolis?
Sam Hornish Jr. makes the pass. He'll win it. Sam Hornish Jr. has beaten Marco Andretti. Sam Hornish Jr. has won the 90th Indianapolis 500.
And that is our next stop as we leave Kansas today and head for the month of May at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Here are our air times as we have pole day from 12 to 2 and 3 to 7 on May 12th, and that's at noon on ESPN2, 3 p.m. on ABC. And then we go on through the month of May with time trials throughout May 13th, the 19th. There's so much there. All you got to do is keep checking, as we say, those local listings. Let's check in once more with Jack Arute.
Yeah, I caught up with Tequila Patron driver Scott Sharp. Scotty, what happened out there?
I don't know, Jack. It was a tough last stint for us. Just the car's really sliding around a lot, a bit loose. Sort of had it under control. We're just trying to running out, hoping maybe I'd get a spot or two there at the end. All of a sudden, went turn 3, and thing just snapped on me and clobbered the left side of the wall.
Well, the good news is you're okay, and even the better news, guys, this is a former pole sitter for the Indianapolis 500. Bet you he can't wait to get to the Brickyard.
All right, Jack, and there is Dan Weldon. Starting to get a little lonely out there. The rest of the crew's been dismissed, but he's still taking the photos as there is another hat change as we are about to close out here. We'll see you Saturday, May 12th at noon Eastern on ESPN2, then 3 o'clock Eastern on ABC for Indy 500 Pole Day. That's the start of our Indy 500 coverage. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Coming up next, the NHRA Southern Nationals from Atlanta, Georgia, with that big showdown between father and daughter, John and Ashley Force. For our entire ESPN2 crew, I'm Marty Reed. Congratulations to our winner, Dan Weldon. We'll see you at Indy.